Good evening and welcome to The Right Side, the show where we talk about today's trends, issues, and news from an admittedly conservative perspective. This evening, we have a special treat. We're joined this evening by Steve Tavares. He is a journalist that works with the East Bay Express as well as the East Bay Citizen. And he has done a lot in at least the East Bay area for now in exposing cronyism and corruption in the political system on a local level. And I'm glad to be joined by Steve Tavares.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
So talk to me about how you got involved in journalism in the first place and what it was that, we'll talk a little bit about your transition after.
Yeah. Well, I got into it as a second career. I was in banking before. So I tell people that it was kind of my fault that the economy tanked, but not really, because I wasn't that good of a salesman. But I always had a pulse on political writing, what's going on nationally and locally. So I just started figuring out how we're going to fix newspapers, and maybe it's not going to be a billionaire, but it's going to be a guy with a blog, starting with a blog, and a lot of hard work.
Okay.
And that's how it started.
And so just out of curiosity, were you part of a big evil banking corporation in that?
Somewhat.
Somewhat evil?
Somewhat.
Or somewhat big?
Yes. Are you prompting me to say which one?
No commercials here.
It's one, yes. Yeah, it's one that's was pretty bad.
Oh, okay. Well, I just, knowing that, we get along well, but you lean a little bit to the left, and so I was figuring it must have been just rough on you to be part of an evil banking empire.
It was. I didn't fit in. It was like, who am I? I was like, everybody just had their were too tight, just wound up too tight, and I just didn't fit in. So I went into the side of those liberals in the media, and now I am one.
Okay, so when you decided that you were going to start tracking things journalistically and you were going to start following politics, which came first, the journalism or the politics, for you?
It definitely was. It was a journal. That's a good question. It was the journalism first. It didn't matter to me, although I would freely admit, I'm a left-leaning reporter.
Almost brought you over to the dark side.
Yeah. So, it was first. I just wanted to get the stories out, and I just happened to live in the East Bay, where there's not many Republicans or conservatives, at least in government.
Right.
So it was an easy target to go after, the more liberal side of the government. And so, like I always tell people on the right, I've never taken down a Republican, but the flip side is that there aren't any.
Well, that's part of the problem.
Except yourself, sir.
Yeah, there's no target-rich environment for you.
Right.
We've got screwy Republicans as well, but they never get to the point of notoriety where they would be paid attention to, in most cases in the East Bay. So you started covering political beats. Did you start inside of a newspaper? Did you start blogging on your own? Talk to me about how that whole thing went.
Yeah, no, there was really no reason to start looking for a job at, say, one of the Bay Area News Group or the Chronicle papers, because it was kind of, to me, like, why would I learn how to be, in the early 80s, why would I learn how to be a repairman for, Betamax recorders when they were going to go out of style? VHS was coming in, right? So there's no reason for me to get into that system, the corporate media, what I would call it, and just get a blog. It's cheap. You've taken over the printing press, basically, and you just do the reporting, and you'll get called a blogger.
Yes.
And that depends. That's a bad word, depending on the person, not just who says it, not who they are. And after a while, if you make sense, you may be a blogger. But if a lot of people start reading you, you start getting more power that way. You're not just some crazy guy just spouting off. You're doing some sort of service, because I can't fool everybody. I can't fool 50,000 people that read the East Bay Citizen. They know this is news that they're not getting, and I'm delivering it, and hopefully it works out. Working out so far.
Well, yeah, one of the things that I've always enjoyed about you is that I met you when I was campaigning and beginning to campaign, and we were out and running around, but you were one of the few journalists that I saw actually in the meetings that you were covering. Yeah. And so I know that you've been critical of the corporate media because they tend to do what I call, or what we on the right call, drive-by types of reporting. Yeah. They take hearsay, or they don't even necessarily research. They've got the wrong facts and figures in many cases. They don't understand the background or the context. Do you feel that that's a major differentiator in why people are reading you as opposed to some of the other publications?
Yeah, and you're bringing up a subject that's just making me just go nuts. If I used a pen more than a keyboard, what you're talking about is want to stick it right in my neck sometimes, because the stuff that I read, and I can do like journalistic forensics on these stories from people who are supposed to be really good in the political scene, in the Chronicle, and in the Bay Area News Group, and it's just I don't know what. I feel like sometimes I'm crazy, like I'm not seeing this at all. This is a completely different world than what they're describing, and I think people feel that there's no context in those stories. Whether mine, like you said, I'm right there in the meetings, and I'm the first one there, and I'm always the last one there to leave. Often it's the janitors kicking us out. It happens all the time. And you just can't get the context by sitting in the meeting itself. And so if you're not even at the meeting with these other reporters, and they're using their power of their newspaper to broadcast this thousands of times bigger than I can, with the false story, and I have the real story, of the context, because the context happens in chit-chats. And we've had those chit-chats when you were running. It's afterwards is when you get the real stuff and you really understand what's going on, what's the story mean. And so I think people, when they read the East Bay Citizen, they feel like they're learning something they're not supposed to know.
Well, and in talking to other candidates, because when we're out there and running around and finding out where they get their news or what their pulse rate is, there are journalists that we talk to because we know there's the megaphone. Right. And those guys tend to influence elections, and they will cut people out of the process and not do the research. They don't vet the candidates, and they have a chosen favorite, like we saw in the recent race with Eric Swalwell and Pete Stark, where they wanted to be focused on Pete Stark as an enemy, did no vetting of Eric Swalwell, and then you actually were doing research, and I've seen you do it on numbers of occasions, where you've developed enough of a following and enough credibility that, first of all the political folks in the area are watching your blog, not the newspaper. And then I actually see their blogs and their stories covering things that you've uncovered, which means you do have more pull than they want to give you credit for, but you're not at a point where they can ignore you for it, which is great, because you've exposed a number of different political scandals, and just in the East Bay, and a lot of times people don't pay attention to what's happening on a local level, and so they have no idea how exciting it can be, in the Hayward School Board or Alameda County Supervisor or other things that might be out there. Tell us a little bit about some of the stories that you've uncovered by doing your job.
Yeah, well, when things really got started, I've been doing this for 3.5 years. With that site, and it was steadily building in readership and in attention. But it wasn't until Nadia Lockyer's scandal, at February of this year, that everybody just it went prime time. And it was that when she ran for supervisor, she's Bill Lockyer's wife, and he had a lot to do with getting her that seat. I would call it. I would say he bought the seat, and I was there doing the work. I was at the meetings when she was running in 2010. I was watching her, and I was not seeing. There was something wrong, and I cannot tell you that I knew that she had a drug problem or she was having an affair with a person with a similar addiction. I can't say that, but I definitely knew, and you can see in my writing, that there was something amiss. And so when this story broke in February, It was basically like people were like, "Oh, this guy was telling the truth." I mean, he knew something was on, and so that was one of that's when things really got going. And the Chronicle's the one that broke the story of the a fight in Newark with her then boyfriend, but I was the one who broke the story that she was using drugs a couple days after, and it was because I had seen stuff at meetings and board of supervisor meetings that were very, very odd, and she was missing a lot, and she was not just she wasn't there at meetings, she was disappearing, like literally. She was never a very how should I say, large woman to start with, and yet she was just literally skin and bones. So you knew something was up there. And I've kept an eye on East Bay's Assemblywoman Mary Hayashi for a while, and so when she came through with shoplifting, actually a couple months before Nadia Lockyer, it just made for a wild year, and it led to in Hayward, I uncovered that there was 2 school board members that were having an affair as school board members without telling anybody. And as I always say, I'm not against love, right? But when the taxpayers' money is involved and you're making decisions where your vote, one of those votes could be 2 votes on a 5-person board in a city that has awful school district, well, then I need to bring that up. And they eventually didn't run for re-election. But to this day, even though the election just ended, they never said why they weren't running for re-election. Well, but we know. And I mean, I've joked with you before that, one of the reasons you probably don't bust Republicans or conservatives is that for them, it's like, oh, I turned in my red box a day and a half late, and I don't want anyone to find out about it, so I'm not going to run for office. And where an affair or drug abuse or whatever on the Democrat side seems to be a resume enhancement of some sort. So, they come at it differently. Yeah. And I think it's as I said, I'll be very honest, and in my writing and my websites, the mission statement is very clear. We are a center to left website, because that's where it's actually just a business model. It's the best business model. That's where the readers are in in the East Bay. Yeah, especially there. So I want that spot. I would be happy that there was a center to right version of the East Bay citizen in that area, because I'm of the belief that part of these problems with, you say, Democrats that are just going crazy, it's because, in a way, I'm blaming the Republicans in the area because they're not there. And we really need the party to rise up a little bit. I'm not going to say all the way, but something, because there's something to be said for both parties rubbing up against each other, sharpening each other up.
Well, the rubbing up on each other is the problem that you keep uncovering. So, no, but even though you consider yourself left of center, the thing that I've always appreciated about you and your partner in crime, Shane Bond, is that even though, I mean, a lot of times you can't tell where the two of you stand on an issue because it doesn't matter to you. As long as it's true, that's what you're focused on. And so I would argue it doesn't have to be left or right necessarily. It's the people who are searching for the truth is the important factor there, and not the political ideology.
Right. I think we all agree on that, and that's something that you've always said too. It's just there's a pool of facts and information that, and probably you would agree, like 90%, we all agree on as Americans. It's just sometimes that 10% is kind of squiggles around. We can't really grab it. And I tell people that, I went to Tea Party rallies in Pleasanton. I got kicked out of one because they told me they knew what I was up to, and I didn't know. What I was up to was to, mess around with the liberals in my area by going to this and showing that these people here at this Tea Party, I guess what you would call it, they're very nice people. They may have skewed older, but they're very nice. These people love America, and I don't know what's there's something disconnect between that last part, but I don't think it's any more different than say Occupy a group, which is I think the same side of or the different side of the same coin.
Well, people are disgruntled, and they're trying to find a way to reach out and be heard. And so in that regard, the two movements do have something in common.
Yeah.
There are departures, obviously. Like, I've never seen anything blown up or anybody crap on a police car at a tea party, but, you know, that's different. but yeah, I mean, it is a scenario where people across the spectrum, we have friends that are more liberal, some are more conservative, but when we talk as humans, you and I have talked about the fact that, like you said, 90% of the time we agree on the issues. And I was telling you a story once about being out and talking to people, and a guy told me that he was glad the country was declining because America needed to be taken down a couple notches. And you made a comment to me like, did you punch him in the mouth? It's like, no, I'm campaigning, I can't do that. Yeah, but I mean, that's that same kind of patriotism that I think runs through a lot of our blood.
I do remember that. But that was in the Tri-Valley. So, right?
Yeah.
So that may be one.
Yeah, one guy
that's a whole different
on a
world.
bicycle. Yeah. But so you're starting to build an empire. You've got one more partner in crime on board with you, as we mentioned, Shane. What would somebody who wants to be a citizen journalist, what kind of steps would they need to take? Are you looking for more help to get the truth out around the Bay Area?
Yeah, you know, definitely. You know, the genius about this business plan is I think, you know, four people, three maybe, reporters could cover the entire government of all the cities in the East Bay. You add 4 or 5, you can go all the way down here, Mountain View, San Jose, and really do you know, a lot of so-called damage, which is. Damage is seen through, you know, the people in power, not the people, regular people who I write for. That's why it's called The Citizen. We're citizens. We're all citizens, and I'm just really just trying
to prove that.
Yeah. Yeah, I was born in Castro Valley. Yeah. So, you know, it's I think of it as it's called Citizen for a reason, and you know, I'm just doing the legwork, and I'm bringing out the artillery, so to speak, and you know, I can write the story about whatever corruption, but I need the citizens to be the ones who latch onto the story and take it to their city hall and just, you know, yell at those council people or whatever government entity they're at. They need to make the change, and it's not just going to be some story, and that's starting to happen. You need more. I need more people. But to get to the question about, you know, what I do, anybody could do it. I mean, you can get, these meetings are public. You have to be let in. And, you know, in your local city, the council person, they'll talk to you. They don't care. They'll talk to anybody. You just quote them, just write it. It just could be like any other thing. You just got to keep at it.
So you cover not just the gotcha stories, but you generally track elections, the context of what's happening, decisions being made at the city or county level, those kinds of things. Some people might be wondering, well, how is this different than something like the Patch or something of that nature? And I know you don't consider yourself Patch, and you don't consider yourself corporate media. Yeah. Help differentiate about the kind of caliber of individual you're looking for to help you in this movement.
Yeah, you know, Patch came after I did, and I was like, well, that's a great idea. I think I have it. Except there's one big problem with Patch sites, that, at least in terms of what I see the future of journalism being, which is what I'm doing, but it has to be more of a niche. See, the Patch is more like it does everything. It will cover the you know, the new burger joint down the street in your town, or crime. I think the future is more of like cable television. So where you know where the entertainment channel is at, you know where the cable news channel, you even know which is the cable news channel that's right and which one is left and which one's kind of in the center.
Which one's in the center?
Yeah. CNN, is that?
Okay.
Yeah, I guess so.
We all have our beliefs.
So it's basically the model I think of the future is it's more of a niche. So that's why I'm more like the website, the Washington website, Politico, is more closely aligned to what I'm doing. I'm just following politics in this one area. That's why Patch has a problem. It's for one person to do all those things. Crime it's not possible, and you're spread too thin. So I just have to go to 4 or 5 council meetings in the East Bay a week, and interview some people here and there. And most of the time you go to City Hall, everybody you need to talk to is right there. You don't have to call, you don't have to drive anywhere. They're all there, and so you can get things done pretty quickly. But anybody can do it. Anybody can do it.
Well, so do you have any visions of the potential future reality of a Breitbart-like scenario? Yeah,
you mentioned that name before. You think I would get all upset, but I totally liked what that guy did. And if we want to talk conspiracy, then on that issue, what happened to him, I'll agree with you. But and that's for your conservative viewers. That was a little candy there. So liberal did think that somebody axed Andrew Breitbart. There you go. But I'll be honest. Want to rule the world.
Well, but a business model perspective, I mean, left or right, the concept of exposing things that people aren't necessarily aware of was something he did well. And like I said, the value I see in the kind of work that you do is that it's fair. I hope never to be the subject of one of your gotcha articles, but the others are fine. So tell us a little bit more about how we get a hold of you, or how people can contact you if they want to learn more, or if they want to read some of your stories. Yeah,
you just go to, it's all there on ebcitizen.com. And it's all there. If you got some kind of scoop, the email's right there. I'd love to hear from it. And that's where a lot of these stories start out with something. Did you hear so-and-so, did this or resigned, or, that's how it starts. There's a lot of ways, just get the ball rolling. And, so people who feel, I want people who feel disenfranchised, disaffected by what's going on. I want them to feel like this is not, there's something there. So somebody can tell your story, and there's somebody that's independent. Because there's a lot of stories out there. I know many of them in Hayward for some reason, where the newspaper doesn't want to hear it because it somehow connects to their bottom line in terms of advertising and Chamber of Commerce kind of things. Whereas I they didn't help me, and I'm not going to help them. So I would just be gladly in the terms of doing what's right, getting that story out. Okay. And
Well, thank you for sharing, and thank you for doing what you do, and we'll look forward to chatting with you sometime soon.
Yeah, thank you.
At this point, we'll have a word from our underwriter, the Conservative Forum.
constitutional law attorney. And they say, oh, really? What kind of constitutional law attorney? I said, well, I'm the true kind, the kind that believe that the Constitution is what the Constitution says and what it intended to say. Anything beyond that is tyranny and should not be allowed.
revolution against a ruling class that simply lectures but does not listen or defend the American people. It is government versus the people. Am I right? Yeah. Look at the Electoral College example, right? A leftist popular challenge to states' rights. You think the founders weren't brilliant people? Did they not know what they were doing by carefully calibrating to get the small states and the big states to come together? Why does Wyoming get 2 senators in California? Actually, I'd rather have Wyoming's 2 senators.
And that was a word from our underwriter, the Conservative Forum. They're known for bringing in speakers once a month here in Mountain View at 432 Steerland Road at the IFES Portuguese Hall. And amazingly enough, they draw 300 to 500 conservatives per month to that venue. A lot of it has to do with the speakers that they bring in, such as in January. It'll be the second Tuesday of the month as opposed to the normal first Tuesday. Yaron Brook, the director of the Ayn Rand Institute, will be speaking. In February, it's Kevin Jackson of the Black Sphere. In March, there will be a panel discussion on how to fix education. In April, Dr. David Bobb will be coming from Hillsdale College. And in May, Bill Whittle will be the guest speaker. And in December, we have Armstrong and Getty for the Christmas party. So again, we'd like to encourage you to check out the Conservative Forum at theconservativeforum.com, where you can check the schedule and other items. And in closing, again, we'd like to thank Steve Tavares for being our guest this evening. But in many cases, we know that the media, the corporate media specifically, is covering up big stories. We're looking at the General Petraeus story happening in the news right now, what's happening in Benghazi, what was known, when was it known, who was involved, and why are all of the people who were scheduled to testify either out of a job or out of the country now that it's time to actually step up and tell the American people what was going on. And that's where people like Steve and Shane and maybe you can get involved and help shed some light on the political influence that is wielded not only on a national level but on a local level, because we know that we're grooming the young monsters here locally that we send to Washington and other places. So on that note, I'd like to thank you again for joining us this evening on The Right Side. I'm your host, Chris Pareja, and I'll look forward to seeing you again in person or on the show sometime soon. Have a good night.